Hey guys, project-zodiac here. I'm back with another video, and this is my video review for Spider-Man No Way Home. I have a lot to talk about, so I'm sorry if it's gonna seem like I'm rushing through things. Also, I just wanted to get this out of the way. This is gonna be a spoiler-free video review. I saw it yesterday. I'm watching it again tonight. Today's Thursday, the 16th of December, and then this weekend I'll record and upload a spoiler discussion video. So this is going to be spoiler free. The only things I'm going to be talking about really is that could be considered spoiler is going to be things that the trailers already showed us, so technically they're not spoilers. um but yeah, I just wanted to get that out of the way. I will also be addressing a couple of things from my from my problems with the MCU Spider-Man video. So if you haven't watched that, do watch that after this, because you guys will understand where I'm coming from, because it is important to the review of this video itself. And then the last thing I wanted to address is I'm just going to give you guys my verdict right now. And that is basically just go watch the movie. This movie is so good. It's amazing. It's fantastic. It's just so creative. It's just so fun. It's amazing. This movie is just so great. Just go watch this movie. Definitely go watch this movie. Um, there's just so much in this movie that is just so amazing. That's all I can say. It is tied with some of the Tobey Maguire movies as my all-time favorite Spider-Man movie. Um, for those of you that don't know, Tom Holland, which I do talk about in my problems with the MCU Spider-Man video, so again, go watch that, please. Um, so, for those of you that don't know, Tom Holland is not my favorite Spider-Man. He's my least favorite Spider-Man, and Homecoming is my least favorite Spider-Man movie. Far From Home is like tied with some of the other ones as my second or third favorite Spider-Man movie. Um, but yeah, I still had issues with Far From Home, but this one I don't really have a lot of issues. So uh, that's basically just my verdict. I wanted to get that out of the way so that I can kind of just spend the rest of the video talking about like why I think this movie is so good. So I'll be talking now about like why I think it's good, but also I'll be talking towards the end in a filmmaking perspective of it as well. Um, so yeah, if that's all you guys really cared about, just hearing the verdict, cool. Thank you for at least hearing the verdict. But I hope that you guys do also want to hear why I like the movie, and why um, what I think about the filmmaking side of things. So with all that said, if you watched the movie, hope you enjoyed it. Oh, and if you guys are gonna leave comments, please keep it spoiler free in this video. Again, I will be uploading this spoiler discussion video this weekend. So with all that said, let's get into the actual video. Let's start off right away with Tom Holland's Spider-Man movie. Wow, Tom Holland's role in this Spider-Man movie. It's his best role as Spider-Man. In this movie, he understands what it means to be Spider-Man, and that was all done with the writing. The writing put him in a situation that he needs to be Spider-Man, that he needs to understand, like, crap, I created this situation, I gotta fix it, which the other Spider-Man movies all had, and Far From Home kind of had that as well, but it was only at the end of the movie. This one is like throughout the whole movie, which I loved, because again, it really calls back to the original movies with Tobey Maguire, with Andrew Garfield, because in those movies, like throughout the whole movie, it's them, have like dealing with the situations that they create. So I just love that so much. And it was just so good that they finally, and going into one of my complaints in that video from my problems with the MCU Spider-Man, it's so good that they finally toned him down. Instead of acting like he's an 8-year old jumping and being super hyper, they toned that down so much. He knows when to be serious, he knows when to be mature, he knows when to be hyper. Like, this movie is literally Tom Holland's best role as Spider-Man, because of how they wrote him to be. And it shows that, yeah, Tom Holland is a good Spider-Man. He's still my least favorite Spider-Man, but it shows that he is a good Spider-Man in this movie. And this movie does take him in many different places that we never expected Tom Holland Spider-Man to face, which I loved. again, it is kind of, things that the other Spider-Man movies already did, but the fact that this is a different Spider-Man, and given how the MCU have been treating him, to see him go through so much hard things is amazing. So I'm really, really glad they took him in this direction. Um, the movie is brutal. It's savage. It is. Some parts can be a little scary, actually. Not horror, but like just emotionally scary. Which they did a very good job with, which I really liked. They also ended up doing a very good job in like capturing that essence of like, you know Peter Parker being in this situation and like his thought process behind it all, which again the original movies all did pretty well. So I'm just so glad that this one they gave Tom Holland that, like that the writers finally decided to do Tom Holland right, by giving him his best role as Spider-Man. I know that there are a couple of rumors that he might be scheduled for another three Spider-Man movies. For the moment, there are still rumors. He was originally scheduled or contracted for only three solo Spider-Man movies. So if this is the end of his movies, this is definitely a great conclusion, especially to what everything Far From Home. So I was gonna say No Way Home, but everything that Far From Home established and built off of. Um, I want to even say Homecoming, but Homecoming is just really my least favorite, and I don't really think it really adds too much to it, other than showing how much Peter matures. Because in Homecoming, the dude is just super hyper. In this one, like I said, he learns how to take things serious, and the fact that it comes right when sorry, I keep confusing the two. Right when Far From Home ends, it continues that progression at the end of Far From Home established so well about Peter being in the situation that he had to fix. So that's one of the things like throughout the whole movie. So yeah, this is just Tom Holland's best role as Spider-Man, and it's just so good. I loved it. Good job, Tom Holland. Good job, writers, in finally writing Spider-Man good. It was just so good. Now, in terms of like the humor itself, that was another issue I had, where the MCU Spider-Man movies felt like they would always force jokes in, and I'm so glad that they toned that down. This movie does take itself seriously. This movie does know when to be funny, and this movie does know when to implement jokes in serious situations, unlike the other ones, like the other MCU Spider-Man movies. I say that though, but that's the case for the most part. There are a few moments where it is a serious situation, and like there are a few moments in general where it can be a serious situation and it's acceptable to put a joke there. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about though is there are a few moments where it is serious and they're kind of putting a joke, but the joke is not done as to be a joke. It's kind of, oh yeah, this is happening. It's a serious situation, but it's not dialogue or, like trying to be funny forcefully. It's something that's natural. A very good example of that is at the very start of the movie when Peter's run away from the press. Um, I'm not gonna go into spoilers again. That's literally the first like 2 minutes of it, and you see that in the trailer anyway. But there's just scenes following that goes into what I'm talking about, and it just shows that they learned how to put a serious moment in a Spider-Man movie, but have some humor into it, but not taking away from the seriousness of it. And I thought that that was really well done. It's still a joke in a serious situation, but it doesn't feel forced. It feels natural, and it's not. It's kind of funny when you see it, but in that moment you understand that it's not. So I do think that that was the right way to go with that. So they did a good job with that. And then there are also a couple moments when they know how to make jokes correctly and the times to make the jokes, even if it's a serious moment. So they do take moments to make the jokes flow right, even if it's a serious moment and they're forcing, I don't want to say forcing, but putting in a joke itself, they still make it fit with the seriousness of it for the most part. And that's pretty good. There was only, but that was only like I'd say 4 times where it was a serious moment and they kind of forcefully put the joke, but the joke still worked and it didn't fully feel forced. And now the third thing I had to say about the jokes was there was a couple of moments where the joke does feel forced in either a non-serious moment or in a serious moment. But there are very few of those. I think like maybe just 2 or 3 of those. So it really shows that Marvel learned how to calm down the jokes and how to take the jokes seriously and how to make it work and how to make it not feel forced. So I'm glad that they are doing that. And it's not, that was a big issue. So again, watch that video please for my problems with the MCU Spider-Man, because that's something I talk about there. Um, but what I'm saying now is that the forced joke stuff isn't really a problem with Spider-Man as a whole in the MCU, but the MCU as a whole after like phase 2 or halfway through phase 2. So I'm glad that recently they've been learning how to balance the forced jokes. So I'm very, very glad for that. In terms of pacing now, I think that the pacing itself was really well done. I mean, people criticize Spider-Man 3 and 2 for having so much stuff when I don't think it did. If, as an example, just random numbers, if Spider-Man 3 and Amazing Spider-Man 2 had like 5 different things going on, this movie has like 10 to 12, maybe 15 different things going on. There's so much in this movie. So some people might feel like there's way too much in this movie, and it kind of leads me into I think I mentioned this in my problems with the MCU Spider-Man, that everyone's gonna be praising this movie because it's an MCU movie and it has way more stuff than the other movies, and it turns out that that's kind of true. So be aware that this movie has a ton of stuff. There's like just layers and layers and layers of stuff that happens in it. But like Spider-Man 3 and like The Amazing Spider-Man 2, all of those many different things are all woven in together and it makes sense, it flows. So I never had any issues with Amazing Spider-Man 3 or, sorry, Amazing Spider-Man 2 or Spider-Man 3 in having a lot of things. I never thought they had a lot of things. I thought everything always flowed pretty well. But in this one, there's definitely a lot of things, but they made it work. Which thankfully they made it work, because I was so anxious going into this movie. Like my anxiety level was high up because I'm just like, oh no. I'm like, what if this happens? What if that happens? How are they gonna handle this? How are they gonna handle that? I was just so anxious. But thankfully, for the most part, the pacing is really, really good. There's a couple of things that the pacing was a little bit off on, but I can't really talk about that. I need to talk about that in my spoiler discussion video. But yeah, for the most part, the pacing was really good. They balanced everything out pretty well, including the villains themselves. For the most part, some of my criticism against the pacing kind of revolves around the villains. I guess one thing I can say is that a couple of the villains don't. Like, the pacing for a couple of them, I don't think was like the best pacing for a couple of them. But for the most part, it's fine. Like, I don't mind it. And now, basically, that was it for the pacing. In the villains themselves, I thought that the villains were really, really well done for the most part. Green Goblin is amazing in this movie. But yeah, and I just think that this movie was so well done, and it's so emotional as well. Like, it's so emotional. Like, this is one of the most emotional Spider-Man movies for sure. Um, and like I said, just so much stuff happens. You guys just have to see it. I will also say this. I did think it was a little predictable, especially when that second trailer was released. The second that second trailer was released, I kind of wished I didn't watch it. And then I kind of told my friends, like, here's what I think is going to happen in the movie. 80 to 90% of the things I thought was going to happen in the movie happened, including specific dialogue, which I can't talk about. So wait for the spoiler review for that. But I'm so happy because that was basically what I wanted this movie to be. And the big thing is fan service. A lot of people are not gonna like this movie because of the fan service. A lot of the things I wanted this movie to have does include a lot of fan service. And I mean, like, fan service, like with the villains, with Tom Holland as Spider-Man himself, like callbacks to his movies as Spider-Man. There's fan service for Happy, for Aunt May, for just like everything in the MCU. Like there's just a lot of fan service in this movie, and a lot of people are gonna be complaining about that. But I feel like the fan service was pretty well done, and it adds to the story. It doesn't technically feel forced, but like okay, like there was one thing that felt forced, but it was just amazing. Like that one particular fan service thing was just amazing. I loved it. I can't talk about it because of spoilers, um, but it was just so funny. It's towards the beginning of the movie. It was just so funny. It was hilarious. That one did feel forced, but it was just so great. um, so yeah, keep in mind there's a lot of fan service. The fan service works though, and honestly, the movie is just so good. Now, kind of going into so yeah, I just love the movie because it fixed so many issues that I had with Tom Holland's Spider-Man. There's still a couple of issues. Like I don't mean him as the character. I just mean his movies as a whole. Like, um, he's really on his own this time. He really knows when like to take this responsibility. Like it's just him for the most part. I mean, he has help from Ned and MJ, but like they're just the people in the chair basically. Um, it's literally him. It's just him, and I just think that they did that really well. It really shows how much he has grown. So I think that this was really well done. Now, in terms of going into the filmmaking side of things, let's talk about the CGI. The CGI for the most part is pretty good. Kind of basic. The villains for the most part, their CGI was basically how they were in their original movies, so nothing too different, I don't think. I don't like that Doctor Octopus's tentacles are CGI now. They kind of feel a little bit off, and I read that they did that so that he could do a whole bunch of crazy things that wasn't possible with the practical ones. But then watching the movie and then having just watched Spider-Man 2 not too long before it, yeah, that was kind of a lame excuse because the things he does in this movie isn't very different from the things he did in those movies. Maybe there's a few scenes where they use a practical thing, but for the most part it is CGI, and for the most part it kind of just looks meh. So I do wish that they did use more practical, like the arms, because it wasn't very different from what they could have done with it practical. So yeah, there's only like a few scenes that I can think of that was kind of maybe practical, but I'm not sure. I was sitting very far away, so when I'm gonna see it tonight, I'm gonna be sitting a little bit closer. Hopefully, it'll be easier to tell. Um, Going into the CGI itself as well with Doctor Octopus's de aging CGI effect, I thought it was pretty well done. Except that I think that William Defoe's one looked kind of bad. I mean, it's not terrible, but compared to Doctor Octopus, I don't think William Defoe's was as good. And oh, one last thing about the villains, I didn't really like some of the pacing with it and some of the explanation for some of the things regarding the villains. Um, yeah, for the most part, it was pretty good, the villains. There was just a couple things, including some of the explanation related stuff, that I just didn't really like because it wasn't well established or explained. Um, but yeah, so with that aside though, yeah, William Dafoe CGI was just like the aging CGI was okay. All of the actors did a very good job. Like this is all of their best roles as these characters for sure, including William Dafoe as Green Goblin. I still do prefer I forgot his name, but the actor who plays Doctor Octopus, I preferred him in The Amazing Spider-Man 2 because there was one of those moments where it kind of shows the MCU joke writing in it where with his character, but not a lot. There was only like one or two small moments. There was also one thing that I forgot. There was a couple of moments where you can really see the contrast between the MCU um, Spider-Man, like how the MCU handles Spider-Man, and how the other Spider-Man movies, like the tones between them are, and how like so off-putting it can be. But thankfully, it's not the case for most of the movie. It's probably like 2 or 3 scenes, and they're short scenes as well. Like I said, they really balance things out, thankfully. Um, but yeah, so and now just going into lighting, film angles, film cameras. The image itself is pretty good, pretty sharp. I'm gonna see it in Dolby tonight. Yesterday I saw it just in a regular screen, so I would definitely be able to see the color differences for it being in the Dolby screen. Um, but even in a standard screen, I thought that the colors were really pretty good. It is a darker tone. Keep that in mind. Even it's like a little bit more grayish, especially compared to Homecoming. Like the color palette for it. So keep that in mind. But it fits pretty well with the tone of the movie. I also feel like the camera angles were kind of basic and generic for the most part. There was nothing very different about them. Um, Even the highlight of the filmography for this was the slow motion scenes, and thankfully they know when to use slow motion in this movie. And they used it for some of the most emotional scenes, and it was really well done. Even if those shots were pretty basic, they were still beautifully shot. And they don't use slow motion for every emotional scene, but a couple of the scenes they do. The scenes that they don't, they were also filmed really well. Like they really dedicated themselves to capturing the emotions of the scene really well. So when it's an emotional scene, either happy or somber, they definitely balanced it. Like they balanced it out against all the generic um, shots, you know. So overall, I thought that even though the filmmaking was pretty average for the most part, and by filmmaking I mean the photography style of it, there was a lot of beautiful shots for sure. Overall, I just think that this movie was so good, and I definitely recommend you guys watch it. So I hope you guys watch my problems with the MCU Spider-Man video and my spoiler discussion video um, later this weekend. So I hope you guys enjoy the movie. And again, I think I said it already, but if I didn't, please, if you're gonna leave comments, don't put spoilers. Leave those spoilers for the spoiler discussion video. Um, but yeah, I hope you guys enjoy this movie, and I hope you guys watch this movie. It's so good. Definitely go watch it. So, with all that said, rate, comment, subscribe, and I'll talk to you guys later.